And your time, thank you. And Justin's going to start your time right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Leighton, and I am here to talk about bridging the generation gap, communication strategies for experienced professionals. So if you've been working a while, you know that the workplace has changed a lot. Um, you know, I think we can all remember when we first started our careers, we had actual phones on our desks and, we would answer those phones and, um, we had in-person conversations that really we could solve a lot of problems instead of a lot of back and forth. And it's really since the 2010s, this is really the first that we've seen at least four different generations in the workplace. And of course, every generation has their own way of communicating. And of course, we all think that our way of communicating is the best way of communicating. And so one of the things that I've discovered throughout the years in talking with job seekers, especially the younger job seekers who are like the Gen Zs and the millennials, sometimes they come across as being very kind of like whiny and demanding and, that they're not listening. But really, it's kind of like an onion layer. We as baby boomers and Gen Xers, we are all talking about the same things that the millennials and the Gen Zers are talking about, but we just have a different way of communicating. And so we all have like different expectations in the workplace. And so,
Excuse me, Anne.
yeah,
Amy, if I could ask you if you wanted your PowerPoint presentation to be in the presentation mode, because right
yeah.
now that would be
Oh,
great if you would
okay.
make that. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. I'm not quite sure how to do that.
It should let you just click on the power. And if it's not, this works too because we can see your
Okay.
screen.
Okay. Well, how about if we just do it this way
That
since
works.
we're
Thank you.
okay. And
If you
so,
go down to the bottom left, at the very bottom of the PowerPoint, there's a little thing that looks like a screen. It's like a square with a little line coming out of the bottom. If you click on on the bottom,
oops,
in the bottom row of further down,
hold
you
on.
right further down.
I lost my presentation.
Oh,
Yeah. Let's see.
okay. I'm not helping. Talk to you.
Okay, so let's see. Let's bring it back.
Sorry to have broken your momentum there.
No, that's okay. So let me stop sharing and see if I can bring it back that way.
Anne was saying at the bottom of your screen, there's like a little monitor there. And I think that's what she was telling you to press.
Okay.
So if you come over to the right a little bit more, there you go. Whoops, come on
Right
back.
here.
Keep going to your right, or keep going the other way. There you go. Whoops. Okay. Come back, come back, come back, come back.
Just
It looks like a
before where
screen. It looks like a screen.
Looks like screen.
it looks
Yep,
like
right
a
there.
screen.
Right
There
there.
you go.
Okay.
Yeah, there
There
you
we
go.
go. Thank you.
Takes a village. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh man. Okay, lost it again. Sorry. Okay, let me um okay. So anyway, so why this topic matters. Each generation has their own way of communicating and setting expectations in the workplace. And so, if you want to stand out in today's job search, we need to know how we can connect with each of the generations. So let me ask you this. Have you ever sent a detailed email and maybe got a one-word response? If so, how does that make you feel? Do you feel like, wait a minute, is the person just blowing me off, or did they not understand the question? And so we kind of are questioning that. Have you ever had an interview where you lost the hiring manager like halfway through the interview? And it's like you get the impression that they're looking at you like you have five heads. Or have you ever felt like, you walk into an interview, the interviewer's younger, and they immediately look at you and they think, oh my gosh, this person's overqualified, even before you had the opportunity to speak? I'm sure we've all had those experiences. They're real, but there are ways to overcome these feelings. And so today's focus, I wanted to talk about why different generations communicate the way that they do, how you can adjust your approach without feeling like you have to fake it. And then I also want to talk about how to translate your experience on your resume and during your interview so younger hiring managers see your value. And so before we start, I want to ask the question, what's been your biggest workplace or job search challenge? And if you want to include that in the chat, that's fine.
Yep, that's great. And I'll let you know what some of the responses are. Oh,
Perfect.
overqualified, my age. Yeah, those are the two big ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gaps in resume, overqualified, getting past the chatbots to a human. I agree with that one.
Okay. Yeah. And those are all
Yep.
real concerns that everyone has. And so I wanted to start off by talking about the generational differences and why this matters. So the millennials and the Gen Z don't just want technical skills. They value things like collaboration, adaptability, and mentorship. They value leadership differently, so understanding their expectations can help you communicate better. So for example, I had a client who was looking for a job. He knew that he was going to have a series of interviews within the organization. And fortunately, he found out that the one interview was going to be with people that he would be directing. So he was applying for a director's position. So we took the information, we were going through the coaching, and he looked at, he started to talk about all of his accomplishments and like what he did to help better his former employers and all that. But I had to stop him in the middle of his speech because what he was saying was all about him, which that's what the interview is about. It's about your skills. However, the way he was wording this stuff, the people who were in the room, who would be younger, primarily Generation Z, they were not getting what they wanted to hear from him. In other words, he was not telling them, um, you know, um, he was not telling them about what he was going to do to help mentor them. He was not telling them about how he was adaptable to their needs. He was not telling them about collaborating with them. And once we talked about that and helped change the narrative so that he could still talk about all of his accomplishments and the results, but do it in a way that he's not excluding his potential staff, the conversation went much better because then people, the people who were sitting in on the interview, the younger folks, the Gen Z, they were like, oh, okay, this guy will help me grow within this organization. This guy will help me. He will listen to my thoughts and my concerns, and he will help me, do better in my job. So once we came up with that narrative, fortunately, he went through the interview and then got the second interview. The second interview was with a series of people who were considered to be the C-suite. So we're talking about a different age group at this point. So we took the same questions that they could possibly ask, but we rearranged them in a way that the older generations would understand and would appreciate. Does that make
And
sense?
and it does, but Anne, people are asking if you could define what are the each generation, what are the age groups for each of those generations?
Okay, so for the baby boomers, that ends like in 1964. And then with the Generation X, that starts 1965, and that continues to about 1980. And then with the millennials were born in 1981 to 96. They are considered collaborators. And so now, when the early 2000s, the millennials were the young people graduating from school. They were kind of known as the job hoppers because it was like one of those things where if they didn't really like something that their current employer was offering them, they would just go down the street and get another job. They were also the group of people that felt like they had to include every single job on their resume, even though they were just starting out in their careers. And so, for the career coaches out there, I'm sure you all remember dealing with resumes from people who just recently graduated, and all of a sudden you were trying to decipher a 5-page resume. And it's like, how in the world do you have all this experience? One client that I had, for example, had listed every job he had since age 8 when he started working on his grandfather's farm, and because they thought that that was just so important to include that information. But now the millennials are growing up, and they're the ones who are the managers. They're the directors and they're the executives. And so the things that they are focusing on is leadership and guiding and like going into that next phase of the organization. And so what they expect from older coworkers: strategic thinking and problem solving, efficient open communications, and a balance of leadership and flexibility. And so, how do you position yourself with millennials? You want to be a resource, not just a leader. And so, when it comes to like answering questions, I help teams work through challenges and improve productivity by 25%. That way you're showing, hey, I'm a resource and I know how to do these things. You want to keep the communications focused. You know, we kind of have a tendency to just kind of, go off and like make everything wordy. The millennials like quick communications, bullet points and emails. They want clear takeaways in meetings. Millennials want mentors. They do not want micromanagers. Okay. Any questions? Okay.
Yes. I guess, well, someone was saying that they don't like to be micromanaged because regardless of age. Is there a way that you can, as an older worker, express that to somebody who's in Gen Z or millennial?
Yes, and actually we will be getting into that a little bit later with some examples.
Okay.
Because like one of the things that, well, millennials, Gen Z, one of the things that really frustrates them is when someone starts off by saying, well, I have 25 plus years experience in something like that. And they're like, oh my gosh, is this person going to be relevant to what I need now? And so that's a good question, and we'll get into that a little bit later with some of the examples that I've included. But yes, there are ways to get around that. And so the next generation is Generation Z, and Generation Z is born 1997 to 2012, and they are the digital natives seeking mentorship. And so the Gen Zs kind of had a rough start in starting their careers because it was under the pandemic. And so a lot of these young people were either going to college virtually, doing internships virtually, or just starting their careers virtually. And so they really didn't have a lot of the traditional hands-on experiences that we have had, during our careers. And so they are entering the workforce, and some of them, depending on what fields they go into, are even responsible for hiring entry-level folks. And so what Gen Z expects from older coworkers: again, mentorship and knowledge sharing, honest, direct communication. Everything with Gen Z is natural. It's organic. And so if you look back at like advertising and things like that that attract Gen Z, it's all about natural, organic, being real. And Gen Z also expects respect for inclusion and work-life balance. The main thing with Gen Z that is so important to take away is they want to feel as though they have been heard. A lot of times Gen Z will get the reputation of, kind of throwing out what they want, everybody to do for them and not listening to what has been done in the past. But if you peel back the layers, and again, I use the onion reference a lot, if you peel back the layers and really listen to what they're saying, 9 times out of 10, they're on the same page as what we are. They just have different ways of communicating. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they didn't have the traditional schooling and, entering into the workforce that a lot of us have had. And so how do you position yourself with the Generation Z? Frame your leadership as supportive and adaptive. You can say things like, I believe in mentorship and adjusting my leadership style for the team. Give real-time, constructive feedback. Keep it short, casual, and, do the feedback after projects. It's better than being formal and, waiting. And so why this works? Gen Z values collaboration, but again, they also do not like to be micromanaged. And again, as we brought up, a lot of us do not like to be micromanaged. And so, but again, Gen Z wants to feel like they are contributing, that they are being heard. And so now I have some resume and interview pitfalls and how to fix them. So one example is your resume is being reviewed by someone who doesn't remember a world before the internet. So how do you handle that? Your interviewer may be like 25 to 30 years younger. What do you do? And so let me come up with a couple of examples here. So I'm going to throw this out to you, and please feel free to chime in with your answers. My resume, I feel like my resume is getting ignored. How do I fix this? Any suggestions? Like, if you feel that your resume is being ignored, how do you fix this? Like, what are some things that maybe have worked for you, maybe have not worked for you? And please feel free to include in the chat.
That's a good question, because a couple people have said in chat that they feel that they are being ignored and not contacted.
Okay.
So we have too long is one of the responses.
Okay. Anyone else?
Updated. Yep. Someone's just updated, add keywords relevant to the position, use language updates.
Okay. So these are all great responses. The number one thing I would really recommend is looking at the job description. Study that job description. And usually on a job description, the top 3 bullet points that the employer has listed, those are probably the most important things that they're looking among, and it can be a very lengthy job description, but the top 3 are the main bullets to pay attention to. So we want to take the language from the job description and make sure our resume mirrors that in a way, because the majority of resumes will go through applicant tracking systems, and the applicant tracking systems have been programmed to pick up the key words or the key phrases or the key patterns from the job description. So we want the resume to, include those things. We also want to include achievements, not duties. So a lot of times, we kind of get in the habit of writing our resumes in a way that we just list our to-do list. Okay, this is what I did. boom, boom, boom. But instead, we want to talk about achievements. We want to talk about the results of those achievements. Employers love numbers. They love the quantitative numbers. So if you can show like dollar signs, percentages, like you've increased productivity, you've reduced budgets, whatever, that is what you should include. Excuse me. Also include modern job titles. And so every organization may have a different meaning for their job title. But what we want to do is show how that job title relates to the modern world, because the worst possible thing is to have someone look at your resume and say, that's nice, but does it apply to the job that we're hiring for? So make sure the job titles match. So here's an example. This is the before. Managed customer service team and handled complaints. So if you had that on your resume, what do you think a potential employer would think about that? Managed customer service team and handled complaints. Do you think they would be wowed by that? Probably not. They'd probably be like, okay, question mark. So instead, to make it more visual, what you might want to say is led a customer service team that reduced response time by 30%, improving client satisfaction scores by 20%. See the difference between the two? The second one is giving a visual. It's including the quantitative numbers of how you've improved something, but then like you've reduced responses, but you've improved client satisfaction. And bottom line is employers want improved client satisfaction. So try to make the response more visual and applicable to the position that you're applying to. Does that make sense? Okay. So here's another one. Responsible for training new employees. And we've all fallen into that to that trap of like, I'm responsible for this, responsible for that, responsible for this. That's okay, but really, what does responsible mean? So instead of starting off with responsible for, maybe reword it like this: developed a training program that onboarded 15 new hires, reducing ramp up time by 40%. So again, you're creating that visual. The person can actually visualize what you did. You developed something, you brought on new hires, and again, you reduced the ramp up time by 40%. So now the person can actually see the accomplishment and the result of the accomplishment.
And Anne, Amy, are you on this particular slide for resume and interview pitfalls? Is that the slide we're still on?
I'm sorry, I started talking. This is it. Resume pitfall number 1. Okay, so again, it's my resume is getting ignored, how to fix it. ATS friendly format, highlight achievements, not duties, and use modern job titles. Okay.
Great.
Okay. So now I have a couple of interview pitfalls. The first one is millennials and Gen Z hiring managers. How do they connect with you? So a couple ways to fix it. Mirror their communication style. Focus on results, not job titles. Because again, a job title can mean different things to different organizations. So focus on the results, focus on your soft skills, focus on how you got that result. Just don't focus on the job title. And so I have an example for you. We've all had the question. I don't know how you feel about this question, but it was always one that I dreaded when I was interviewing. And even as a coach, I'm still like, ugh. It's tell me about yourself. So, just for grins, how would you start the conversation when someone asked you the question, tell me about yourself? And feel free to include in the chat.
Let's see, we have nothing yet. We do have some questions that are beginning to pop up though.
Okay.
Someone said, talk about your experience. How far back? Oh, well, people are asking how far. Yeah, we've got more questions here. Provide a synopsis of my past
Okay.
positions.
Okay. And so you're keying in on what I wanted to talk about with this example. A lot of times when we are asked that question, I mean, let's face it, let's go back to when we were first started looking in, when we were like in our 20s and we were just, looking for our first real job. And a lot of the rejection that we had was, well, you don't have enough experience. And so as we've gained experience throughout the year, I don't know about you, but I've always felt like that was kind of my badge of honor. Wow, I have over 15 years experience, or I have over 20 years experience, thinking that that was my way of showing, hey, I know what I'm doing here. However, it gets to a certain point where that works against us. So the wrong way to answer that question is, I have 25 years of experience in project management, overseeing various operations across multiple teams. Again, that's just letting someone know that you've been in the industry for 25 years, but it's not really telling them about yourself. So a better way of answering the question is, I'm passionate about optimizing processes and leading teams to success. In my last role, I implemented a workflow that improved efficiency by 35%. So that way, the question of just saying, well, letting that person know what you've done. You've let them know that you're passionate about the industry, that you love to lead for success, and you're giving an example of one of the things that you actually implemented. And so again, that's giving a broader variety of what you're capable of doing than just saying, well, I've had 25 years of experience.
Amy, I'm so sorry.
That kind of
You broke up. You faded out
okay.
right before you were just like 30 seconds ago.
Okay. So yeah, so basically what I was saying is that by focusing on what you've done, by answering the question, tell me about yourself, you're getting around the ageism question, because again, you're not letting them know how long you've been in the industry, but you're showing them what you're passionate about. You're showing them how you've implemented systems that have led to success within the organization. And it's creating that visual that the hiring manager can picture, more so than just saying, well, I've had 25 years of experience. And then that way you're not setting yourself up to say, oh, they didn't hire me because of my age. And so does that make sense? Okay. And so another question that you may be asked during an interview is, why do you want to work here? And so
Is that for millennials and Gen Z hiring managers too? Or is that just
yes.
in general? Okay.
Yes. So, oh, well, sorry. Well, okay. So with that question, where do you see why do you want to work here? And again, it ties into the where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because at this point, millennials and Gen Z, again, they may think that you're overqualified for the position. They also may look at it like, okay, what is this person's game plan here? Are they just going to be here for a couple of years and then leave us? Or are they really committed to our organization? And again, it's another way to get around the ageism question. And so again, you want to focus on your adaptability and your contributions. You talk about how you see yourself growing with the organization and taking on new challenges to help the team succeed. And so instead of saying, well, I have extensive experience in this field and this job aligns with my background, that could be viewed as kind of threatening to a younger hiring manager because they may be like, what is this person's MO? But instead, you can throw it back onto the company and say something to the effect of, your company's focus on innovation aligns with my passion for continuous improvement. I enjoy mentoring teams and driving operational excellence, and I'd love to bring that experience here. And so again, you're talking about mentorship. You're talking about the company's focus. You're not making it about yourself, although in a hidden way you are, because you're talking about all the things that you can do to help the company grow. Okay. And then, the next question may be like, what motivates you at work? So millennials and Gen Z want purpose-driven professionals. And again, Gen Z values learning and mentorship. So, by saying, I enjoy solving problems and seeing real impact, I improved my role times by 40%. So again, it's all about what you can do for the company. But in these responses, you're also using the wording that the younger generation appreciates. And it's not, well, I've done this, 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 and that. It's, I've enjoyed solving problems. I see real impact. I like to mentor. I like to collaborate. And then just for some final takeaways, you don't need to change who you are. You just need to adapt how you communicate. Your experience is valuable, but how you present it makes the world of difference. And if I've said it once, I'll say it again. Millennials and Gen Z respect mentorship, problem solving, and flexibility. So I want to thank you. Here's a quote. Reinvention isn't about starting over. It's about building on everything you've already accomplished. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer questions for you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank
I like
you.
the quote. That's great. I'm going to scroll up a little bit because we did have a couple questions, and let me go to my Word file. Many job titles are very general, senior research associate. How do you know that employer defines senior versus level of associates?
Okay,
Other
that's a
levels of
good
associates.
that's a great question. So this is where I would recommend researching the company and then compare it to similar questions. LinkedIn is very good at this. So like if you're looking at a company profile on LinkedIn, like off to the right, they may say company, like similar companies or companies that you may also be interested in, and compare like what their roles are to the job title. And then that way you have a better idea of, is this something that is really, based on my experience, or is this completely different? Is this a completely different job title than what I'm used to? I had done a resume for someone who, this was a few years ago, they were interested in working for another company, but the current job title that they had in their current position did not match to, it was the same job title, but what this person did in their current job had nothing to do with the job that they were interested in. And basically what they had done was they had looked at the job title and just automatically assumed, okay, I'm qualified for this position. They were not qualified for that position. And so it's really good to just not solely focus on the job title, but focus more on the requirements, what the job description is saying, and then base your decision on that.
Okay. And a couple people have asked about mirroring the communication style.
Okay.
How do you do that both in person is a video different than in person?
Um, I wouldn't say, and again, I'm just going to go back to if you have an opportunity to like look at the person's LinkedIn profile, if you have an opportunity to look at the company profile, you get a feel for the environment that they are interested in, and so it's not going to be like continually, if they say one word one way, you don't have to automatically say it that way. But basically, what I mean is like looking at the job, looking at the company environment, and basically adjusting your tone to meet what they're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually that does. Let's see. I just want to scroll down. Can you please chat samples? People are asking if they can have your slide presentation.
Oh, sure.
And just if you just send it to me, then I'll make sure that everybody who registered gets it.
Okay.
That would be great. Thank you. And somebody says, what if your job was not measured primarily in percentages? Some roles are carrying roles and have different requirements.
Right. And there are ways that you can get around that. And like I said, ideally, employers love to see numbers, but there are ways that you can do it. So look at the accomplishment that you've done. Look at the responsibility. What was the accomplishment that you had with that role? So I'm thinking healthcare, for example. You've worked with the patient and you had a breakthrough with the patient, or education. You maybe had a breakthrough with a couple of students who maybe were not getting a concept. Um, those are accomplishments, but you don't have to attach a percentage to them. But it's being able to show that you made a contribution to your department, to the organization.
Wow. Okay. That sounds good. Amy, this has been just so informative. And a lot of people are in the comments are, thumbs up